Obviously, there is no statute of limitations for murder, so simply because they don't prosecute Manson at this time doesn't mean they can't prosecute him at some time in the future. They can prosecute him. I think you should also be informed that the prosecution knew of these other offenses. They knew of the so-called Shorty O'Shea case, and they knew of the Hinman case in advance of the prosecutions in Tate LaBianca. It's Kinneric's position that the prosecution was required to join all these offenses and try them at one time and place. To drag it out indefinitely is in a sense a cruel and unusual punishment.
Mr. Fitzgerald, what are you attempting to accomplish by your visit to the county?
Well, Mr. Kinnerick and I approached Kenneth Hahn, a member of the Board of Supervisors, and we asked his assistance in perhaps instituting a taxpayer's suit to enjoin the District Attorney of Los Angeles from proceeding with any further prosecution of Charles Manson. We pointed out to Hahn that Manson has been convicted and sentenced on 7 separate and distinct murder offenses. He's been sentenced to death 7 times, and that it's certainly not in anybody's best interest to continue to prosecute him in order that they can get 2 more death sentences or 3 more death sentences. We're concerned, it's almost like Charles Dickinson's Bleak House. There just isn't going to be an end to this litigation. We approached Hahn because Hahn considers himself to be the guardian of the taxpayers' purse strings, and we estimate that the case will cost these additional prosecutions to get this unwarranted sort of death penalty against Manson will cost the taxpayers an additional $2 million. And we just don't think it's in anybody's best interest.
In other words, you're looking at the economy as far as the county's taxpayers are concerned?
Well, quite frankly, our interests are somewhat different, but we know that's the way to approach Hahn, and we know that, of course, while we know, of course, that he has influence in molding public opinion, and we know from other sources that the taxpayers of this county are very, very disturbed about the amount of money it's cost to prosecute Manson and the other defendants already, and we thought we could coattail them.
What will become of that case then if no one is ever tried for it?
Well,
legally, what is happening?
Well, Manson and Adkins don't want to be present. They don't have any interest in dragging out this case. As a matter of fact, they'd be very happy if they just were allowed to go on to prison, go on to their respective death rows, and be informed of the verdict by postcard. It's really the prosecution that wants to continue to prosecute these defendants, ostensibly for some sort of insurance in the unlikely event the case, the Tate LaBianca case, is reversed on appeal.
What happens when the case is stopped? Are you attempting to quash the original murder charge against Hinman and O'Shea, or for Hinman and O'Shea?
Well, we approached Hahn.
Where does it start?
We approached Hahn, and we asked Hahn to perhaps consider the advisability of the Board of Supervisors on behalf of the taxpayers of the county instituting a lawsuit against the prosecution to restrain and prohibit them from any further prosecution, on the ground that it's an idle act, it's unnecessary.
Does it take a lawsuit, or can't somebody just declare it?
Well, as Hahn pointed out to us, Hahn, although he's not an attorney, Hahn pointed out that in his opinion, based on legal advice he'd received from the county council, it's rather questionable whether a lawsuit would lie. But Hahn did express an enormous amount of interest. First of all, he was unaware that they were going to continue to prosecute Manson. He was unaware of that fact initially. And secondly, he said although he could not, or he didn't feel he could institute a lawsuit, that he might go to the public with it. He might point out to the taxpayers of the county that they're going to be required to spend an additional $2 million or $1.5 million dollars to prosecute somebody against whom you already have 8 death verdicts.
Are there any other persons involved who might escape trial for those 2 crimes if it is dropped against Manson and Atkins?
Well, I don't think so. Of course, there are 2 other defendants. There's Bruce Davis and there's Steve Grogan. Now, we did not suggest to Kenneth Hahn that they shouldn't be prosecuted, and most observers feel that if Manson and Atkins are removed from the case could be tried with relative dispatch at a relatively small cost to the taxpayers. But with the presence of Manson and Manson's attorney Kinerick and the presence of Susan Atkins, the proceedings are likely to take a substantial amount of time, and they're likely to be an enormous amount of attendant publicity, etc. So all we're suggesting is that Manson and Atkins not be prosecuted, not the other 2. They're certainly entitled to be convicted or vindicated as the case may be.
What chance do you think you have of having this accepted?
Well, it's difficult to say. Our legal position appears to be somewhat tenuous in terms of actually instituting a lawsuit to restrain the district attorney of Los Angeles County. On the other hand, as Kenneth Hahn pointed out to us, the influence of public opinion is tremendous. And there is, I know from my own personal experience, everywhere I go, the big topic is the amount of money it's costing the taxpayers. And so I think the pressure of public opinion may well influence the prosecution in the overall handling of the case.
Paul, thank you very much.
You bet, Dick.
Appreciate your time. Very kind of you.
Yeah, I might say.
Mr. Fitzgerald, would this amount to dropping the charges against Manson and Atkins and anybody else involved in the trial? Are there others who would be on trial who would escape prosecution if this was dropped? With what success do you think you'll meet?